Hi, I've lived in the city for many years, and I've also watched government function or not. And I'm a little bit concerned about what I'm hearing because it's in direct contradiction to the legislation that the State House is considering. I'm sorry.
It's on. Just yeah. There you go.
What you're saying is in direct contradiction to what the legislation says. It negates every one of the assurances you gave us. So it's very confusing. Can you please explain that?
Sure. So, I mean, do you want me to go through the legislation, or do you want to talk about the structure?
I mean, the legislation is just very basic enabling legislation. The legislation doesn't control for anything. The legislation does have rate caps, so it definitely addresses rates. The legislation doesn't eliminate the Department of Health's oversight over the quality of the water. It really is just enabling Providence Water or any other water utility to enter into some kind of a partnership. It's very, very, very basic legislation.
But it's very clear that there is no control once the partnerships are entered into.
So if it was important, so we did actually have legislation 3 years ago that did that. That was much clearer about the labor protections. But because we weren't entering into any type of transaction, it was very unclear as to why it was in legislation as opposed to an RFP or an agreement with the city. If we were to reintroduce the legislation, we're happy to put other controls in the legislation, which just enables the city to do the transaction. But the actual transaction itself is not, the legislation just enables the transaction to occur. It is not dictating all of the terms of a transaction.
That's part of the problem. It doesn't assure us of anything that you said.
I want to reinforce that we're not even remotely close to anything happening here. There are many, many steps that would have to occur before we would be entering into any partnership. We are nowhere near. There's been no RFP. We have no bids from anyone. We haven't been meeting or negotiating with any potential operators. We are just identifying the problem that we have and the fact that it's something that absolutely requires a solution. And
you issued an RFQ when you got 3 bids for it.
We did not get any bids. It was an RFQ, not an RFP. No. Right, they weren't bids. An RFQ is just a request for qualifications to see any operators that would like to provide information about them so that we can identify whether they would be qualified operators. But we didn't request any bids and we didn't receive any bids.
What's the scope of work?
There's no scope of work because it's not an RFP. A request for qualifications, we do this a lot. So an example is we're about to do one for the 5G network in the city around internet. When we ask for people to come in and basically talk to us about, what is the technology, what are the controls in that case. In this case, it's are there any viable operators that exist nationwide. Again, we got 3 responses. It's not a scope of work. In fact, we didn't ask for anything. We just asked for basically the equivalent of a resume just to look at.